Hey everyone, it's Matt from Black Box Mind, and in this video I'm going to show you some really simple techniques to make looping animations like this. Now, although these animations may seem like really complex to put together with things like particle generators and special effects software and things, it's actually not necessarily the case. And today I want to show you some simple and quick techniques to be able to put these animations together in a way that we're not using, fancy third-party plugins, and in a way that we don't actually have to spend any money at all. Cool side note, the music that I'm making this animation for was actually composed by Nico over on his channel, so stick around to the end of the video to listen to the whole track. Alright, so let's jump on the computer and find some visual elements to put together into this animation. Alright, so to get this done, I'm going to cover 4 different things. Firstly, where to go on the internet to find free visual elements that are going to work for doing animations like this. And I'll also talk a bit about what kind of things you need to pay attention to when picking out video clips that are going to work well for this kind of situation. Then we're going to jump onto an editing software and I'll show you how to do some basic looping, and then I'll show you a couple of ways of blending video elements together. So we'll take a look at masks and then we'll take a look at different blending modes as well. Now, for this video I'm using Final Cut Pro, but the techniques and tools that I'm showing you in the editing software are actually pretty universal across everything. So whether you're using Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, or even simpler editing software like Adobe Rush, or maybe even iMovie, I think, a lot of these techniques are going to apply just as much to those softwares as it does to Final Cut Pro. So let's, without any further ado, jump onto the interwebs and I'll show you where to find some cool free visual elements. So here we are on the computer, and my personal favourite website of choice for getting free visual elements is pixabay.com. In actual fact, there are loads of different websites that you can get free stuff from, but personally I've had quite a lot of success using Pixabay. You can search for photos, illustrations, vectors, videos, music and sound effects. I should note that this isn't a paid promotion, not paid by Pixabay at all. I just found that this site has worked a lot for me in the past and I thought I'd share the wealth. It's really cool because when you click on a picture or video or something, you can click on the free download, select the size option that you want, and then hit download, and then it will give you a reference to put up for the author. And it'll also specify over here the license that you have. So free for commercial use, no attribution required, but it's always nice to share the love. So I always copy the stuff and reference it whenever I use it. Speaking of which, all the videos that I've used for making the animation, I've put links to in the description box down below. So you can download those and copy along with everything that I'm doing. Alright, so here we are on the video section. So typically what I do is, as I'm searching for stuff, I'd have the music up and playing, so I kind of get a really good feel for the feeling of the music, the mood of the stuff that I want, the kind of visuals that I'd like to have. And then typically what I do is go through and kind of find some stuff that I feel works for me. So for this music that Nico has masterfully put together for this video, it's quite a little bit futuristic, a bit dark with the feeling and everything. So I typed in dark fantasy douche and we come up with various different stuff. Some of it is just going to be wildly not what we want, but there are things like this kind of stuff. For example, flying particles, dust, some weird kind of visualizations and things that, depending on the type of music, could work really, really well for you. Obviously, there's loads and loads of clips that are going to be available for you to use. So what are some helpful things to bear in mind when looking at these clips to help you pick out and decide whether they're going to work for these kind of animations? Well, one first thing to think about is loopability. As you can see from the website here, a lot of these clips are 12 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. They're not all that long. Ideally, you'd be finding clips that are relatively easy to loop. One very simple way to see if something is easy to loop is to look at the first frame and the last frame and see if they're pretty similar. If they're more or less the same, then you can be pretty sure that the clip will loop fairly well. It might not necessarily be the perfect loop, but it could work for the application that we're going to be using it. If the first frame and the last frame of a video clip is wildly different, then chances are it's not going to loop very well, and you're probably going to get some kind of jump cut when we go into looping the clips. Another thing to think about is to have a really dark background, and this will help to kind of isolate the different elements that are in the video. So with a clip like this dust kind of slowly moving through space, this has a nice dark background which will make it easy for blending multiple video elements together in the editing software. And also for this smoke clip down here, the smoke is appearing white upon a black background, and what we can do really easily in an editing software is to get rid of this black background using the different blend modes, which I'll explain later, and just have that smoky element appear on screen, which is what we want. Another thing to bear in mind is the resolution that the video is at. As you can see, some of these clips are at 4K, some of them are just in high definition. The thing is with 4K, it gives you the space and capabilities to be able to kind of pick and choose a certain region of the video if you're going to be publishing a video in high definition. I'm going to be publishing my videos in high definition, so I can use 4K footage to kind of move around within that image. Alright, so I've spent some time on the Pixabay website and I've picked out these 4 clips that I'm going to merge together. First up, I have this clip, which I thought was really great. For this animation, I had the idea of having Nico's handwritten logo in the center. I really like this kind of central animation element. The one thing I didn't particularly like about this clip was the fact that the stars around the outside don't move, and I thought it was a bit static and could be a bit boring. So what I then went out searching for were elements to kind of fill in this outer space. So the first one that I found were these slow moving stars. And this is going to replace everything outside of the ring here. It's good because they're kind of radiating out from the center, which I kind of like. But one thing with that is that they are quite slow moving. So I wanted to find something that was going to add in a little bit more energy as well. So then I found this clip here. And here you can see these particles are a little bit more energetic. So with these, what I was intending on doing was actually not using this bottom part of the video because that's all fairly static and not really sure what that is, and I don't think that's going to blend too well. But I really like the movement of these more volatile particles in the top half. So what I'll do is when I go into the editing software, I'll probably zoom in on this top part here and then blend that on top of this. So we'll have some transparency and we'll see the slower moving particles behind with these more volatile particles on top. And then those 2 videos will then actually get placed on top of the ring animation that I quite liked. And then right on the very top, I found light leaks. So it's kind of like light that leaks in and onto the image sensor of a camera or something like that. And these are really nice to kind of add in a bit of kind of random flares to the animation. So they'll pop up at random moments. They won't be going like this clip all the way through. I'll kind of spread them out a little bit, and these will be the very top layer of the animation. So right now, they don't blend together at all, but the next step is to jump into the editing software, and from there we can start with some basic looping. Okay, so here we are in Final Cut Pro, the editing software that I'm going to be using for making this animation. But as I said before, the tricks and techniques that I'm going to show you in Final Cut Pro should work in other editing softwares as well. So the first thing that I've done is I've already dragged down Nico's masterfully created piece of music down here, just so I have an idea of the length that the video is going to be. What I'll do is I'll zoom in so that fills up the timeline space down at the bottom here. Right, the next step is to bring in the first clip that I want to loop. So I'm going to have this universe clip. This is going to be the main part of the animation, as we can see. So that is now down and on the timeline. This clip's length falls way short of the length of the music that Nico's put together. So what we're going to have to do is to loop this clip. The super simple technique for looping this clip is, step 1, we're going to trim off the beginning of the clip like this, and the end of the clip like this. Doing this gives us some space to add in transitions, which I'll explain in a second. So we've trimmed off the beginning and we've trimmed off the end of the clip. we move it to the beginning like this, and then we just copy and paste that clip until it reaches the end of the music track. So Command C for copy, then I place the playhead at the end of the clip like this, and then I paste, and paste again, and paste again, and one more. There we go. Right, and then this final clip, I can just trim down to the length that I want the video to be at. All right, so we go back, and there we have the whole clip again. So here we have all of these clips back to back on the timeline. Now, unfortunately, at these edit points, we're not going to have a very smooth transition. I'll play it back just so you can see what that looks like. And there we have a very kind of sharp moment in the video where the video starts again from more or less the beginning of the clip. I'll show you again. Here we come to the end, and now we're back at the beginning. It's a bit of a harsh cut, and so what we're going to do with transitions, with a very simple cross-dissolve transition, which is in practically every editing software ever invented, is going to smooth out that transition from the end of one clip and into the beginning of the next one on the timeline. So cross-dissolve transition, I drag and drop that down onto the clip, and that's put the transition at the beginning and at the end of the clip. And now let's see the difference. So there you go. Much smoother transition. Really smooth and effective way of looping, providing the beginning part of the animation is really similar to the end part. It's just really easy to smooth between the two. And all we have to do now is add in the cross-dissolve transition to each of the points where a new clip starts on the timeline. So cross-dissolve down to here, and then finally cross-dissolve down to here. And now we have a nice long looping animation that runs the length of the video as long as we need it to be. The next technique that we're going to be looking at is using masks, playing around with masks, and how we can use masks to blend together different video elements and different video layers. So let's go back to the beginning of the timeline over here, and we'll drag down another visual element. As I said before, the part that I want to keep from this visual element is this kind of central ring animation and the kind of black space in the middle, which is going to be a great place for putting a logo and maybe a bit of text for the name of the song. And I kind of want to get rid of all of these static stars that are around the outside and replace those static stars with this clip of the slow moving stars and particles that are slowly moving towards frame and radiating out from the center. What I'm going to do is drag that clip out and onto the timeline, but I'm going to place it underneath, here we go, underneath the other clip, like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a mask to this top layer to isolate, to just select this glowing ring animation in the middle. And to do this in Final Cut, we are going to use the shape mask, okay? And there should be similar mask functionalities in other editing software as well. What we're going to do is drag that mask out and onto the clip. And now you can see in the inspector window, which is this window to the right-hand side with all of the information of the selected clip and all the parameters of the selected clip, we now have the shape mask options available to us. Now, at the minute, it's kind of this kind of smoothed out square shape, smoothed out rectangular shape. So we're going to adjust it and play around with the settings until we're just isolating out this central ring element. So we're going to play around with the radius. We're going to increase the curvature so it's oval now, and then play around here. So we have a nice spherical shape. Make sure it's more or less in the middle like this. And then we're going to increase the feathering and maybe decrease the radius a little bit more. All right, so there we go. With a little bit of tweaking, we've kind of isolated out that central ring element from this top clip on the timeline. Let's have a look and see what that looks like now. Okay, so that's better. Maybe we can just increase a bit more the feathering and reduce a bit more the radius, just like this, just so we're really kind of Smoothing out. Okay, that looks okay. That looks good. Still some more tweaking that needs to be done. Now, what is this mask actually doing? Well, our original clip had the static stars around the outside. We didn't want those, we just wanted to select the ring. So we applied the mask. It's essentially allocating this part of that video clip as visible, and anything outside of that clip, this black space around the outside, is now invisible, or its opacity is set to 0%. It's totally transparent. And with that, if we place a clip underneath on the timeline, that means we can now see that clip through this top video layer, which is great. That's exactly what we want. And that is one way that we can blend together two different visual elements onto one video. Now let's play around with the next technique, which is messing around with blend modes. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down onto the timeline the other visual element that I wanted to use, these kind of more volatile particles flying around. Alright, so what we're going to do is click and drag that down and onto the timeline, and again I'm just going to place it above those slower moving particles. Now, as you can see right now, we're able to see through this top layer of transparency because we've applied the mask. That means that everything outside that mask is invisible. So now all we can see below is the volatile particle clip that I've just dragged down and onto the timeline. But we can't see those slow moving clips that are on this bottom layer down here anymore. So what we can do to merge these two bottom clips together is I'm going to apply a blend mode to this top star clip. With this clip selected, we can go over to the inspector window and we can find what we call here the blend mode in the compositing section. By default, the blend mode is set to normal. Now in this drop down menu, we can see we have a plethora of different options. And what these different options do is they play around with certain aspects of the selected video clip. Some will play around with the darkest parts of an image, others will play around with the brightest parts of an image, and some will play around with a video clip depending on the colors that are used within a video clip. Now, there is a whole science behind each one of these options, and there's a very specific and mathematical way that they all work. And I'm going to be totally honest with you, I don't know what those mathematical reasonings are for each of these. And hand on heart, whenever I'm using blending modes, I start at the top, I work my way down until I find something that works for me. All I know is it's a great way of blending together some different video clips on the timeline. So one thing that I think is going to work is this overlay, but with your video clips, make your way through the list, have a play around, mess about with different options in the blending modes until you find something that works for your clip. So let's click on overlay, and here, well, that's kind of made everything super dark in the background, so maybe an ad. Ad seems interesting. Okay, yeah, nice. So we have these different elements flying around. That's cool. One thing I don't like on this clip is the fact that we have this kind of big yellowy, greeny, static thing at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is, which is something that you can do with these visual elements, is to zoom in and reframe that a little bit. So I'm going to scale up here. So it increases the size of that. And then I can move that picture down. So then we don't have any of that static element left in the picture, and then move it so it's just those volatile particles, which is the part of the video that I really like. Now you have to pay attention here. You can see if I go down too far, we come to the edge of that video clip. That means it's moved so far down that that's now the very top of the video clip, which is something that we don't want. So we want to make sure that that, at the very least, is ever so slightly over the top of this of the video stage here in the video editing window. Now that we've found a blending mode that works, let's watch back with the clip and see how those particles kind of all interact together. Okay, I kind of like that. As you can probably tell, with these three different elements, there is quite a bit of difference in the color. Now, one way to tie the whole thing together is to play around with the colors a little bit in order to make them kind of a similar tone. So you can have it like a monochromatic image that kind of ties all of these different visual elements together. The new clip that I've just added and used the blend mode on, this is quite a yellow hue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to the most basic color correction options here in Final Cut, and then just tweak it so I make it more blue. So I will reduce those. So I'll reduce the blue there, and then with the highlights, which are these kind of, all of these kind of particle elements, these are all the highlights, the brightest parts. And here I'm able to adjust the colors depending on the shadows, midtones or highlights. So I'm going to pick out these heights. So I pick these highlights and I bring them all the way up to blue, kind of tying it all together. You can kind of tweak it around to different hues as well if you like. So find a nice blue that works. I'm trying to match up here with this central ring. This is kind of the centerpiece of the animation. And so tweaking around with the colors here just to kind of get everything more or less on par with that central bluish element. Right, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so those elements look pretty good in terms of color. There's with it turned off, and with those particles turned blue, off and on. So that kind of ties the whole thing together, which is really nice. Now, the final clip that I wanted to add on was the light leaks here, these kind of dissolvey elements. And to add those in, I'm going to use the similar technique of using the blend modes. So I'll drag that down onto the very top, because I want this to kind of overlay over everything. And I will then go back to the inspector window, and just as I did with the previous clip, I'll go to the compositing section, I'll find my blend modes, and then go through until I find something that really works. So we have, so that overlay is a little bit too aggressive. That add seems to be working pretty nicely, and so it kind of adds in these kind of extra flaring elements throughout the animation. All right, and that's how to go about using blending modes to kind of further mix together different layers of video within the same video animation. But this playing around with blending modes doesn't just work for video clips, it can also work pretty darn well for graphics as well. So, for example, I have Nico's logo here that is used previously on some other videos, and I bring that down and onto the timeline. I can scale it down so we have it more or less the correct size. And then again, I go to blend modes, and let's try that ahead. There we go, and that is perfectly got rid of the black, and now we're just left with Nico's logo in the center of frame for everybody to pay attention to. Okay, now that we have set up this look, it's a simple case of then using the same techniques that I said for looping the animation on these clips, on these two clips down here. And then I'm going to separate out this top light leak, kind of lens flare-ish element on the top. I'm going to intersperse that throughout the video so it comes in at kind of random moments. And then stretch out Nico's logo so obviously it runs all the way through. And I shall report back to you at the end. And here is the end result. Here at the bottom we have the music track that runs all the way along. Then we also have the slow moving space particles that we had as the kind of base layer for this whole thing. Then we had on top of that using the blend modes, we incorporated in the more volatile, more active particles flowing at a higher speed. Then we have our central ring animation element that is in the middle, creating the nice space in the center for Nico's logo. And then we have Nico's logo itself that runs the whole length of the video as well, as it should do. And then we have these light leak elements that I've kind of used cross dissolves to kind of gently fade in and fade out and intersperse those at kind of random moments throughout the video, just to add a little bit of variety throughout the length of the video. And then right at the end, I added just a little fade to black at the end, just tie off the video. So there you have it, a pretty simple way of finding some free online resources and merging all of these things together using, with this video clip, we used the masks technique, and with this video clip, we used the blending technique, and then we were also able to loop these animations to make them run for the length of the video as long as we needed it to. So this was an example using video clips for a kind of abstract animation, but you can absolutely use this to kind of add in animations to, maybe a more narrative still image. So if I pull up this other timeline here, we can see another example where I had this static image of a kind of giant encased in ice, where I added in these kind of snow element particles using the blend modes, using the same techniques that I've showed you before. And here I added in some kind of light leak elements, again, that I found on Pixabay, with these dust elements, these moving dust elements that I found on Pixabay as well. And then added, a kind of slow zoom in, zoom out animation to add a little bit more movement to the video. I took a still image, a very slow zoom in, and then I took some cloud effects here, and using the blend mode and masking, I was able to add in a kind of little bit of movement in the sky, as well as incorporating some light leaks using blend modes. And then the final example down here was kind of adding in some fiery embers into and to the bottom of the frame here, and that was all using masks and also the blending modes as well. So there are really loads and loads of different options and elements that you can pick and play around with once you get the hang of it. So I encourage you to go onto Pixabay, pick out some stuff, download a whole load of different elements, jump into a video editing software, whichever one you choose, whichever one you have to hand, and just play around with using masks, blend modes, for mixing together different visual elements and see what you can come up with. Alright, so that is the first tutorial for 2022 for this channel, done and out of the way. I hope it was helpful. If there was anything unclear, then by all means let me know in the comments down below. And if you make some animations using the techniques that I've shown you, then by all means tag me in the videos. Let me know what you've done. I'd be really interested to see what you all come up with. So I suppose there's nothing left now but to let you listen to the amazing piece of music that Nico has put together for this video, and I'm just not going to say any more. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the music.